clothes to hide it. As soon as they had said goodnight to the professor and gone upstairs on the first night, the boys came into the girls' room and they all talked it over. "We've fallen on our feet, and no mistake," said Peter. "This is going to be perfectly splendid. The old chap will let us do anything we like. I think he's an old dear," said Susan. "Oh, come off it," said Edmund, who was tired and pretending not to be tired, which always made him bad-tempered. "Don't go on talking like that." "Like what?" said Susan. "And anyway, it's time you were in bed." "Trying to talk like mother," said Edmund. "And who are you to say when I am to go to bed? Go to bed yourself." "Hadn't we all better go to bed?" said Lucy. "There's sure to be a row if we're heard talking here." "No, there won't," said Peter. "I will tell you, this is the sort of house where no one's going to mind what we do. Anyway, we don't hear us. It's about 10 minutes. Oh, they don't hear us. It's about 10 minutes away, a walk from here down to the dining room, and any amount of stairs and passages in between." "What's that noise?" said Lucy suddenly. It was a far larger house than she had ever been in before, and the thought of all those long passages and rows of doors leading into empty rooms was beginning to make her feel a little creepy. "It's only a bird, silly," said Edmund. "It's an owl," said Peter. "This is going to be a wonderful place for birds. I shall go to bed now. I say, let's go and explore tomorrow. You might find anything in a place like this. Did you see those mountains as we came along? And the woods? There might be eagles. There might be stags. There'll be hawks." "Badgers," said Lucy. "Foxes," said Edmund. "Rabbits," said Susan. But when the next morning came, there was a steady rain falling, so thick that when you looked out the window you could see neither the mountains nor the woods nor even the stream in the garden. "Of course it would be raining," said Edmund. They had just finished their breakfast with the professor and were upstairs in the room he had set apart for them, a long room with 2 windows looking out in one direction and 2 in another. "Do stop grumbling, Ed," said Susan. 10 to 1, I'll clear up in an hour or so, and in the meantime we're pretty well off. There's a wireless and lots of books." "Not for me," said Peter. "I'm going to explore in the house." Everyone agreed to this, and that was how the adventure began. It was the sort of house that you never seem to come to the end of, and it was full of unexpected places. The first few doors they tried led only into spare bedrooms, as everyone had expected that they would, but soon they came to a very long room full of pictures, and there they found a suit of armor, and after that a room all hung with green, with a harp in one corner, and then came 3 steps down and 5 steps up, and then a kind of little upstairs hall and a door that led out onto the balcony, and then a whole series of rooms that led into each other and were lined with books, most of them very old books, and some bigger than a Bible in a church. And shortly after that they looked into a room that was quite empty except one big wardrobe, the sort that has a looking glass in the door. There was nothing else in the room at all except a dead blue bottle on the windowsill. "Nothing there," said Peter, and they all tripped out again, all except Lucy. She stayed behind because she thought it would be worthwhile trying the door of the wardrobe, even though she felt almost sure that it would be locked. To her surprise, it opened quite easily, and 2 mothballs dropped out. Looking into the inside, she saw several coats hanging up, mostly long fur coats. There was nothing Lucy liked so much as the smell and feel of fur. She immediately stepped into the wardrobe and got in among the coats and bumped her face against them, leaving the door open, of course, because she knew that it is very foolish to shut oneself into any wardrobe. Soon she went further in and found that there was a second row of coats hanging up behind. The first one, it was almost quite dark in there, and she kept her arms stretched out in front of her so as not to bump her face into the back of the wardrobe. She took a step further in, then 2 or 3 steps, always expecting to feel woodwork against the tips of her fingers, but she couldn't not feel it. This must be simply enormous wardrobe, thought Lucy, going still further in and pushing the soft folds of the coats aside to make room for her. Then she noticed that there was something crunching under her feet. I wonder, is that more mothballs? She thought, stooping down to feel with her hand, but instead of feeling a hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold. This is very queer, she said, and went on a step or 2 further. The moment she found that what was rubbing against her was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough and even prickly. Why, it is just like branches of trees, exclaimed Lucy. And then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away where the back of the wardrobe ought to be in, but a long way off. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later, she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood at nighttime, with snow under her feet and snowflakes falling through the air. Lucy felt a little frightened, but she felt very inquisitive and excited as well. She looked back over her shoulders, and there, between the dark tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe and even catch a glimpse of the empty room from which she had set out. She had, of course, left the door open, for she knew that it was a very silly thing to shut oneself into a wardrobe. It seemed to be still daylight there. I can always get back if anything goes wrong, thought Lucy. She began to walk forward, crunch, crunch, over the snow and through the wood towards the other light. In about 10 minutes, she reached it and found it. It was a lamppost. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of a wood and wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter-patter of feet coming towards her, and soon after that, a very strange person stepped out from among the trees into the light of the lamppost. He was only a little taller than Lucy herself, and he carried over his head an umbrella white with snow from the waist upwards. He was like a man, but his legs were shaped like a goat's. The hair on them was glossy black, and instead of feet, he had goat's hooves. He also had a tail, but Lucy did not notice this at first because it was neatly caught up over the arm that held the umbrella so as to keep it from trailing in the snow. He had a red woolen muffler around his neck, and his skin was rather reddish too. He had a strange but pleasant little face with a short pointed beard and curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck 2 horns, one on each side of his forehead. One of his hands, as I have said, held an umbrella, and the other arm he carried several brown paper parcels. What with parcels and the snow, it looked just as if he had been doing his Christmas shopping. He was a fawn, and when he saw Lucy, he gave such a start of surprise that he dropped all his parcels. "Goodness gracious me!" exclaimed the fawn. That's the end of chapter 1. Now chapter 2, what Lucy found there. "Good evening," said Lucy. but the fawn was so busy picking up his parcels that at first it did not reply. When it had finished, it made her a little bow. Good evening, said the fawn. Excuse me, I don't want to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve? My name's Lucy, she said, not quite understanding him. But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl, said the fawn. Of course I'm a girl, said Lucy. You are in fact human. Of course I'm human, said Lucy, still a little puzzled. To be sure, said the fawn. How stupid of me, but I've never seen a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve before. I'm delighted. That is to say, and then it stopped, as if it had been going to say something. It had not intended, but had remembered in time. Delighted, it went on. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus, and I'm very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. And may I ask, oh Lucy, daughter of Eve, said Tumnus, how you have come into Narnia? Narnia? What's that, said Lucy. This is the land of Narnia, said the fawn, where we are now. All that lies between the lamppost and the great castle of Cair Paravel on the eastern sea, and you have come from the wild woods of the west. I got in through the wardrobe in the spare room, said Lucy. Ah, said Mr. Tumnus in a rather melancholy voice. If only I had worked harder at geography when I was a little fawn, I should no doubt know all about those strange countries. It is too late now, but they aren't countries at all, said Lucy, almost laughing. It's only just back there, at least. I'm not sure it is this summer there. Meanwhile, said Mr. Tumnus, it is winter in Narnia and has been for ever so long, and we shall both catch cold if we stand here talking in the snow. Daughter of Eve from the far land of the Sparrow, where eternal summer reigns around the bright city of Wardrobe. How would it be if you came and had tea with me? Thank you very much, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but I was wondering whether I ought to be getting back. It's only just around the corner, said the fawn, and there will be a roaring fire and toast and sardines and cake. Well, it's very kind of you, said Lucy, but I shan't be able to stay long. If you will take my arm, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, I shall be able to hold to the umbrella over both of us. That's the way now. Off we go. And so Lucy found herself walking through the wood arm in arm with this strange creature, as if they had known each other all their lives. They had not gone far before they came to a place where the ground became rough, and there were rocks all about, the little hills up and little hills down. And at the bottom of one of the small valley, Mr. Tumnus turned suddenly aside, as if he were going to walk straight into an unusual large rock. But at the last moment, Lucy found he was leading her into an entrance of a cave. As soon as they were inside, she found herself blinking in the light of a wood fire. Then Mr. Tumnus stood and took a flaming piece of wood out of the fire with a neat little pair of tongs and lit a lamp. Now she shan't be long, he said, and immediately put a kettle on. Lucy thought she had never been in a nicer place. It was a little dry, clean cave of reddish stone with a carpet on the floor and two little chairs, one for me and one for a friend, said Mr. Tumnus, and a table and a dresser and a mantel piece over the fire, and above that a picture of an old fawn with a gray beard. In one corner there was a door with a Lucy thought must lead to Mr. Tumnus' bedroom. and on one wall was a shelf full of books. Lucy looked at these while he was setting out the tea things. They had titles like The Life and Letters of Soundness, or Nymphs and Their Ways, or Men, Monks, and Gamekeepers, a study in popular legend, or Is Man a Myth? Now, daughter of Eve, said Fawn, and really, it was a wonderful tea. There was a nicer brown egg, lightly boiled, for each of them, and then sardines on toast, and then buttered toast, and then toast with honey, and then a sugar-topped cake. And when Lucy was tired of eating, the Fawn began to talk. He had wonderful tales to tell of life in the forest. He told about the midnight dances, and how the nymphs who lived in the wells and the dryads who lived in the trees came out to dance with the fawns, about long hunting parties after the milk-white stag who could give you wishes if you caught him, about feasting and treasure seekings with the wild red dwarfs in deep mines and caverns from beneath the forest floor, and then about summer when the woods were green and old Silenus of his fat donkey could come to visit them, and sometimes Bacchus himself, and then the streams would run with wine instead of water, and the whole forest would give itself up to jollification for weeks on end. Now that it isn't always winter now, he added gloomily. Then, to cheer himself up, he took out from its case on the dresser a strange little flute that looked as if it were made of straw, and began to play. And the tune he played made Lucy want to cry and laugh and dance and go to sleep all at the same time. It must have been hours later when she took herself and said, "Oh, Mr. Tumnus, I'm sorry to stop you, and I do love that tune, but really I must go home. I only meant to stay for a few minutes. It's no good now, you know," said the fawn, laying down its flute and shaking his head at her very sorrowfully. "No good," said Lucy, jumping and feeling rather frightened. "What do you mean?" "I've got to go home at once. The others will be wondering what happened to me." But a moment later she asked Mr. Tumnus, whatever it is the matter, for the fawn brown eyes had filled with tears, and then the tears began trickling down his cheeks, and soon they were running off the end of its nose, and at last it covered its face with its hands and began to howl. Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy in a great distress. Don't. What is the matter? Are you well? Dear Miss Tumnus, do tell me what is wrong." But the fawn continued sobbing as if his heart would break, and even when Lucy went over and put her arms around him and lent him her handkerchief, he did not stop. He merely took the handkerchief and kept on using it, wringing it out with both hands whenever it got too wet to be any more use, so that presently Lucy was standing in the damp patch. Mr. Tumnus bawled Lucy in his ear, shaking him, "Do stop it at once. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, a great big fawn like you. What on earth are you crying about?" Oh, sobbed Mr. Tumnus. "I'm crying because I'm such a bad fawn." "I don't think you're a bad fawn at all," said Lucy. "I think you're a very good fawn. You're the nicest fawn I've ever met." Oh, you wouldn't say that if you knew," replied Mr. Tumnus between his sobs. "No, I'm a bad fawn. I don't suppose there ever was a worse fawn since the beginning of the world." "But what have you done?" asked Lucy. "My old father now," said Mr. Tumnus, that his picture over the mantelpiece. He would never have done a thing like this. A thing like what? Said Lucy. Like what I've done, said the fawn. Taken service under a white witch. That's what I am. I am in the pay of the white witch. The white witch, who is she? Why, it is she who has got all Narnia under her thumb. It's she who makes it always winter and never Christmas. Think of that. How awful, said Lucy. But what does she pay you for? That's the worst of it, said Mr. Tumnus with a deep groan. I'm a kidnapper for her. That's what I am. Look at me, daughter of Eve. Would you believe that I'm a sort of fawn to meet a poor innocent child in the wood, one that had never done me any harm, and pretended to be friendly with it and invite it home to the cave, all for the sake of lulling it asleep and then handing it over to the white witch? No, said Lucy. I'm sure you wouldn't do anything of the sort. But I have, said the fawn. Well, said Lucy rather slowly, for she wanted to be truthful and yet not to be so hard on him. Well, that was pretty bad. You sure? But you're so sorry for it that I'm sure you'll never do it again. Daughter of Eve, don't you understand, said the fawn. It isn't something I have done. I'm doing it now, this very moment. What do you mean? Cried Lucy, turning her white. You are the child, said Tumnus. I had orders from the white witch that if I saw a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve in the wood, I was to catch them and hand them over to her. And you are the first I have ever met. And I've pretended to be your friend and asked you to tea. And all the time I've been meaning to wait till you were asleep and then go and tell her. Oh, but you won't, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. You won't, will you? Indeed, you really mustn't. And if I don't, said he, beginning to cry again, she's sure to find out, and she'll have my tail cut off, and my horns sawn off, and my beard plucked out, and she'll wave her wand over my beautiful cloven hooves, and turn them into horrid solid hooves, like a wretched horse. And if she is extra and specially angry, she'll turn me into stone, and I shall be only a statue of a fawn in her horrible house until the 4 thrones at Cair Paravel are filled. And goodness knows when that will happen, or whether it will ever happen at all. I am very sorry, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but please let me go home. Of course I will, said the fawn. Of course, I've got to. I see that now. I hadn't known what humans were like before I met you. Of course, I can't give you up to the witch now, not now that I know you, but we must be off at once. I'll see you back at the lamppost. I suppose you can find your own way from there back to the spare room and wardrobe. I'm sure I can, said Lucy. We must go as quietly as we can, said Mr. Tumnus. The whole wood is full of her spies. Even some of the trees are on her side. They both got up and left the tea things on the table, and Mr. Tumnus once more put up his umbrella and gave Lucy his arm, and then went out into the snow. The journey back was not at all like the journey to the fawn's cave. They stole along as quickly as they could, without speaking a word, and Mr. Tumnus kept to the darkest place. Lucy was relieved when they reached the lamppost again. Do you know your way from here, daughter of Eve? Said Mr. Tumnus. Lucy looked very hard between the trees and could just see in the distance a patch of light that looked like daylight. Yes, she said, I can see the wardrobe door. Then be off home as quick as you can, said the fawn, and can you ever forgive me for what I meant to do? Why, of course I can, said Lucy, shaking him heartily by the hand. And I do hope you won't get into dreadful trouble on my account. Farewell, daughter of Eve, said he. Perhaps I may keep the handkerchief. Rather, said Lucy, and then ran towards the far-off patch of daylight as quickly as her legs could carry her. And presently, instead of rough branches brushing past her, she felt coats, and instead of crunching snow under her feet, she felt wooden boards. And all at once, she found herself jumping out of the wardrobe into the same empty room from which the whole adventure had started. She shut the wardrobe tightly behind her and looked around, panting for breath. It was still raining, and she could hear the voices of the others in the passage. Here, I'm here, she shouted. I'm here. I've come back. I'm all right. That's the end of chapter 2. Thank you guys so much for watching and being here with me. And please, guys, do not forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, share, comment, and follow me on Instagram